What's up, friends? Welcome to my channel where we're doing music covers, original music, album reviews, song reviews, reactions, tier lists, whatever the day calls for. If you like what you see here, please subscribe to the channel. If you have content on here, I'll subscribe to you as well. I am all about supporting up-and-comers on here. This has been one of the fastest moving and busiest years of my life in a long time, and it's hard to believe, but we have already reached the end of 2023. And today we are going to be getting into my top 10 albums of 2023. There have also been a lot of bands that I'm a longtime fan of or that have piqued my interest that released a song or two this year but didn't actually come out with new albums. And I got 8 top songs of 2023 as well. Anybody who's familiar with my content and is familiar with what I do knows that I have a new album in the works. And at this time last year, things were kind of stagnant in that department, whereas like I was writing, but the opportunity to actually put it in motion wasn't there. I have a producer and things are kind of wrapping up on the writing end of things, and I'm actually going to be going into the studio soon to start recording my second album, which is going to be called Ugly Living. If you want to check out my first album, it came out about 7-8 years ago now. It's called Communication, and it's on robcarey.bandcamp.com. And I didn't realize until this opportunity came to me how much, like, yes, all the songs exist for this album. The track list exists. A lot of the lyrics exist. But a lot of the songs have, like, loose ends that need tied up, be it intros, making things cohesive and trimming the fat on some parts and just making everything perfect and ready to go into the studio. And last year, it kind of seemed to me at the time that a lot more new albums had come out, and it was kind of hard for me to put just 10 albums into a list. I had like all kinds of honorable mentions and stuff, whereas this year just as many new albums have come out that are worth listening to, but because I've been so wrapped up in my own music, and when I have downtime, a lot of the time I'm going to music I'm already familiar with vocalists that I'm trying to practice to perfect my craft, that I haven't heard a lot of things that have come out in 2023, especially on the deathcore side. So if there was some big deathcore release that came out this year that doesn't end up on this list, it doesn't necessarily mean that I don't think it was good enough or that I didn't like it. I may just not have heard enough of it yet to give it an accurate review. And some of the songs on the list, some of the albums on this list are albums I wanted to give full reviews for and just didn't have the time to do. I'm going to do all of that right now. Like, for instance, Signs of the Swarm came out with a new album, and I have only heard maybe 2 songs from it. And honestly, there's really no excuse for me not having heard that album, especially being that they're from where I'm from. And I heard the opener of that album, and I really liked that. I heard the closer of that album. I was kind of lukewarm to that one. I don't know. All I can really say is that I got 8 songs that came out this year and 10 albums this year that I really want to talk about. All right, let's kick off the top 8 songs for me from 2023. Number 8 is the track Damage Done from the band Icy Stars. Icy Stars is a band I was waiting for quite some time to have a comeback. I've been a little bit underwhelmed by that comeback as a whole, but Damage Done was a very strong song that I ended up listening to a lot more than I thought I was going to. Very strong hook, very interesting music video. They hadn't made anything since Treehouse, which came out in 2016. I didn't realize until they had their comeback recently that I never got the physical copy of Treehouse, which I did. And this is the best thing I think they've ever done. And none of the things they've done so far have come close to that for me, but this was the closest one. It has a really solid hook. I really like the music video. I've gone back to it quite a few times, and compared to the other songs that they've come out with since their return, Anomaly, Drift, and Are We Threevin', Damage Done is definitely the best of the 4, and I'm sure I'll be listening to it many more times in 2024. Number 7 comes from another band that I've been a long-time fan of. I got their last album on vinyl, and it's been a very long time since we've heard from them again. But they only have come out with one song, Mnemonic, and that is the instrumental powerhouse Intervals, led by Aaron Marshall. This new track is nothing that we haven't heard before from the band, and when I did a reaction video to it, I really liked it a lot, but it was a grower. It did grow on me, and it really could have fit, maybe not on Circadian, because Circadian is like such a masterclass in how to do instrumental music with some metal, some jazz, and just all kinds of other great things in between. But it's definitely up there. I think I gave it like a 7.5 or an 8 at the time that I did a reaction to it. And that's pretty much the rating that it would hold today. I mean, there's tons of instrumental prowess and nuance to the song. You got to listen to it a few times to really get it. I watched an interview of their current bassist that they have, and he was talking about some of the things they have coming, and I'm very excited of what's to come for the next Intervals record. Number 6 is the newest track from a band that I found out from the best podcast on the internet. I'm saying it, hands down. The Garza Podcast. Chris Garza is the guitarist of Suicide Silence, and in the past year, he has slowly cultivated such an amazing podcast. I found out about so many great bands here, and I would say the most disappointing news of 2023 is finding out about the band Iya Terra, who I grew to love so much that having only known about them for 3 or 4 months, I already have like at least 3 or 4 cover videos of them on my channel. And wanting to see them live so bad, like they decided to call it quits this year. And I'm really, really gutted by that. And a lot of the comments in regards to this decision have been from people who have been a fan of this band for a really long time, like wishing him the best. And I wish the front man, Nate, all the best too, and all the members of that band. But it's like, I just got here. And you're going to break up already. But mixing like metal riffage in with reggae music is something that I've been trying to do for a really long time. And they do such a great job at it. And I can't remember what reaction video it was that I did. But I said in that video that if my favorite band of all time, 311, were to ever stop making music or stop being a band because age gets the best of all of us, that I thought Nathan and his band Iya Terra would be the ones to carry the torch. And his segment on the Garza Podcast got me so excited for what's to come, because he was talking about how he got a 7-string and he's getting into a lot of heavier music again, and he wanted to integrate all of that into reggae and shit. Like, I thought that was going to be with Iya Terra. I'm super gutted by hearing that they called it quits. And I cannot be more grateful for the Garza Podcast than I am, because it's really been kind of like my gateway to finding out what the fuck is going on this year. Because like I said, I've been very wrapped up in my own music and in my downtime listening to music from bands I'm already familiar with, because I'm trying to practice to those vocalists. You know, like I'm listening to a lot of State Champs. I'm listening to a lot of Slaughter to Prevail, and I don't have any desire to be anything like Alex Terrible. I knew I could never be that, and that's not really my goal. But those gutturals, those lows, like I'm trying to take influence from like all these different vocalists. Checking out new music, I mean, it's kind of taken a back seat this year. And that's why I said, like, if a band that you really like made a new album this year, especially on the deathcore side, if it doesn't make this list, there's a good chance I haven't heard it. But number 6 is another band that I found out about because of the Garza Podcast. So let's get into that. Number 6, Tote from Slay Squad. I don't think there's ever been a band that has integrated metalcore and hip-hop better than these guys, because it's not rap metal. It's real hip hop. And I covered this song. I did like a bass and guitar cover of this track. I think at this point I might be the only person on YouTube who has done a Slay Squad cover. I got some stickers from these guys. I got a tank top from these guys. Like, when I heard these guys and watched their segment on the Garza podcast, I could not wait to support this band in some way, shape, or form. And Beam is still my favorite song of theirs. If you are a big fan of genre mashing and seeing what real hip hop and metalcore could be together, I would definitely say check out Beam and then check out Toad. Toad is a really good song, man, and it's a banger, and I've listened to it so many times, and I wonder if I maybe should have put it a little bit higher on this list. The only reason it's not higher on this list is because of the quality of the other songs we're about to get into here. Number 5. The first song I ever heard from these guys was Chronic Slaughter, and Alex's standout vocals, like a lot of people, grabbed me right away. And that I grabbed that album. I have it here somewhere. I got both of them, both of the full lengths. Misery Sermon and Costalam. Misery Sermon was not a perfect album, and sometimes things were a little bit too over the top, and I feel like they worked all those bugs out with Costalam. And Viking, I had to kind of take myself away from the best of what they do and just focus on the track itself and how it would work into a live setting. And I gotta say, I've listened to it a bunch. The band has expressed a desire to break away from deathcore. I hope they don't break away too far from it because they're just such a good deathcore band. I don't want to see them become another Slipknot. I don't. And Viking has these parts in it that kind of stall a little bit. And there's a lot of lead-ups. Maybe too many lead-ups. But at the end of the day, I'm going back to this thing a ton. And number 4 comes from one of my favorite bands, and it was the first new song that they had put out since 2018. And it is The Story So Far with their track Big Blind. When I made a reaction video to this song, I was very overwhelmed and appreciative to the reaction and the traffic that it got. And it showed me that this band has a great fan base. This track did not showcase any kind of like progression or a next step forward from their last album, Proper Dose. It was kind of just some really nice familiarity with almost like some 80s vibes in the guitar work. Really good lyrics, very cleverly written lyrics. And The Story So Far is one of those bands where I can say they have never written a bad song. They've never written a bad song. They've never made a bad album. And they only have 4 like big full-length albums. I know they have like some earlier releases. They got Songs Of, which was kind of like a split with Stick to Your Guns. I couldn't make a tier list of those 4 albums because it's hard to decide which one's the best because they're all so good. The Story So Far is one of the best bands that I listen to. Like, I love them so much. I'm so glad that they're sticking around. And the status of that band was very much in question because their vocalist, Parker Cannon, has started another project called No Pressure. I got that full-length record here. And it's amazing too. And I love that he's choosing to do both because this is really good, man. Like, they have 2 really short EPs and this full length, and they're all really good too. I'm pretty much convinced that anything Parker Cannon touches is gold, and Big Blind is no different. The hook is great. The guitar work is great. It grew a bunch. I think I gave it like a 7.5 back when I did a reaction video for it. But now, I mean, no, it isn't breaking new ground like Proper Dose did, but it's still just such a good song. And there aren't too many bands I can say that I listen to are flawless. Like I said, my favorite band of all time is 311. I can't even say that they've never written a song I don't like. The Story So Far have never written a song that I don't like, and I listen to Big Blind all the time. And honestly, I'm really looking forward to a new album from these guys just because the 4 albums that they have, I've listened to them so many times that, I mean, I kind of am starting to burn them out. I'm ready for some new stuff from these guys. Number 3. What fan of quality metalcore in their 30s or even their like mid to late 20s don't know about It Dies Today? It Dies Today is a band that kind of fell off of my radar early because like they came out with Forever Scorned and The Cative Choir, and those were both great albums, but they kind of like delivered mixed bags for me after that with Sirens and Lividity. And when I did a reaction video for the first new song they had come out with, and I think it was like 8 years, called Buried by Black Clouds, I was expecting something above average, but nothing that was going to blow me away. And it did blow me away. It was incredible, top notch. Like, I would say, even though they've been a band for as long as they have been, Buried by Black Clouds might be the best thing I've ever heard It Dies Today do. Everything is so much tougher in its delivery. All the emo roots have been shed here, and the screaming delivery isn't too far off from that of After the Burial, and the clean singing comes like kind of like a Jesse Leach era Killswitch Engage, and the hook was solid. Everything is memorable. All the breakdown slam, like everything about that song. Like I was very much like surprised at the quality. Not because I thought it would suck. I wouldn't have checked the band out if I thought it was going to suck. Like, I think they are at their peak right now. Anything they do moving forward from here will be covered on the channel. And if there's an album coming, like, I'm really looking forward to that. If Buried by Black Clouds represents the quality of what It Dies Today is working on right now, if they are working on an album, I would not be surprised if it was the best thing of their entire career. Moving on, number 2. This was the first time I had ever actually listened to this band. And I didn't know what to expect other than I knew we were going to be hearing some deathcore. And this is another band that really was brought to my radar because of the Garza podcast. Like, I watch every episode, even if there's a band on there that I either don't like that much or I don't know that much about. Like, Garza's podcast is so good that I watch every single episode. Like, the last band he had on was Code Orange, which they never really grabbed me, but I'm going to watch the episode. Like, it's such a good podcast. And that's kind of what brought Shadow of Intent on my radar. And when they did, they happened to have dropped a new song, The Migrant. And it is amazing. I think I gave it like an 8 out of 10, and I sold it short. But that's the thing with reaction videos. It's like, especially when you're doing like intricate music like symphonic deathcore, it's like you don't really truly know how you feel about it until there's more listens. And I would definitely give that song a 9.5 now. And I listen to it all the time. It's on my iPod Shuffle at work. It comes up all the time. So at least 5 of the 7 days of the week, I'm hearing that track. And I thought there would be more from those guys this year. And that's it. And whatever they do next, it'll be covered here. It was a great song. It kind of sounded like if Dimmu Borgir started listening to a bunch of metalcore and deathcore. That's what I got from it. Everything about it is super strong. It doesn't get lost in the technicality. It doesn't get too over the top with the symphonic stuff. It doesn't get too over the top with the deathcore. Like, it's all just perfect. The Migrant was a perfect song. The number 1 top track of 2023. Longtime fan of these guys. Not only am I a longtime fan of this band, but they inspire the way I write a lot. And when Rare Form came out, it really blew my mind because they were one of the first bands I had heard to introduce like swing time into the djent grooves. They were one of the first bands that used these 7-string and 8-string guitars in the soundscape of like this djent movement that was booming at the time, that didn't solely rely on it. Like, the thrash riffs were there, and like I have 4 videos of blueprints of songs that I have for my new album, but it's just me performing them. It's not studio stuff. But the last one I put out, it's the exact way that the record will start, and I was really thinking of them when I wrote the riffs for this song, because it's like you're mainly focusing on the thrash and the melodies, and you're only really utilizing that top string when it calls for it. You don't want to abuse it. Like After the Burial really taught me that. And After the Burial have done so much in teaching me how to write a really good modern metalcore song. I love these guys so much, and it's so tragic what happened with their guitarist Justin Lowe. And I think that Trent, the remaining guitarist, has done a great job carrying the torch. And despite that, since Wolves Within, the last album that Justin Lowe was on, nothing really grabbed me as much as it did from the old days. But this new song they had, Nothing Gold, I think it was one of the only songs of the entire year that I gave a perfect 10 to. It is incredible, and on this track, they actually don't really rely on djent too much at all. There's moments in it that remind me of like Misery Signals. It's very melodic. You're not really thinking about the fact that there's no djent in this song, because the riffage is just so fucking good. Nothing Gold was an incredible track, and I know that they're never going to just kind of forget about djent, but it was kind of nice to see them do that here in favor of a really good melodic metal song with some solid riffage, the best vocal delivery Anthony, their vocalist, has ever put out. Nothing Gold was just like incredible, and I am definitely confident saying that it is my favorite song of the year. Let's get into the top 10 albums of 2023. Number 10, End and the Sin of Human Frailty. 10, 9, and 8 on this list all kind of have a similar sound to them, but as you go up the list, in my opinion, it's a better version of doing this sound. Will Putney of Fit for an Autopsy is in this band, and a lot of people complain about his production style. He produced one of my favorite metalcore, deathcore, whatever you want to call it, albums of all time, which is Divided By from Structures. And the production of that album was very complained about, because he tends to turn everything up to 11, almost to the point where it's clipping. And for that album, Divided By from Structures, it really made it pop. And what I like about the approach to this album, End, and his production, is he took in all this complaining about his production style and just doubled down on it. If anything, I think if he turned everything up to 11 when he did Structures, he turned everything up to 12 on this one. I mean, it is kind of grating at times, but it fits in with the chaotic element. It's not a perfect album. And there may be albums, like I said, that I missed this year that may have been more fitting to be on this list than this one. But The Gaping Wounds of Earth is a great track. As soon as you think it's going to get into this samey, chuggy kind of thing, it changes up into all this chaotic mathcore madness. It sounds great. The vocalist of this band is from Counterparts, a band that I am a longtime fan of and have covered many times on this channel. His vocals are so distorted on this album that you wouldn't even know it was him unless somebody told you it was him. And it's number 10 because I don't think I'm going to go back to this one a whole bunch. But when I'm fucking pissed off, I'll be throwing this thing on. Number 9. All right, let's get into another band that I knew about because of the Garza podcast, Chamber, and their new album, A Love to Kill For. They have a similar sound to End, but there's more diversity and there's more of a reason to pay attention to the individuals within the band. There's a track called Tremble on this album that's really, really good. There's all kinds of good stuff on this album, but for the sake of time, I'm going to keep this one brief. It's number 9 on this list for a reason. It's really, really good. I would check it out if you're a fan of chaotic, mathy deathcore music. Number 8. Number 8 is the album So Unknown from the band Jesus Peace. And this is another band that was brought to my attention because of the Garza podcast. And this album is incredible, man. There's a song called Fear of Failure, Tunnel Vision, The Bond. There's a song called FTBS, just called Fuck the Bullshit. Somebody may have come out with that before them. I don't know. There's a song called Silver Lining that has mad Deftones vibes. This album is really, really good. And the only reason I don't have more to say about it right now is because it's still growing on me. And every time I listen to it, it grows on me more and more. And one of the things you hear people saying about this band is that you can tell more than a lot of other bands just how fucking pissed the vocalist is in his delivery. And I agree with that. And when they were on the Garza podcast, their vocalist barely spoke. He didn't say very much because his voice was that fucking torched. I can relate to that. And I think that's so badass. And I'm really liking this band. Number 7. If you want to hear more about the ins and outs of what I think of this record, I did a full album review of it. It's pretty lengthy too. I go into each and every song. But number 7 is Invent Animate's album Heavener. With Heavener, Invent Animate went from being just a better version of Northlane, because Northlane have really dropped the ball lately in being interesting, into being something unique and all on their own, while still kind of staying within the confines of this genty, accessible, kind of poppy metalcore, but knowing when to turn all of that off and just be abrasive all the time. Like there's tracks on that album like that. And the big single on this album, Without a Whisper, it's the best track. I'm saying it. And I didn't want to include any albums that I'm covering in the top 8 songs, because the top 8 songs I kind of wanted to give to bands that aren't on the album list, just to kind of shout out as many great bands as I could in this video. But Without a Whisper should have been on here too. It's a really good track. And Shade Astray, I did a reaction video for that. It was really good. And Reverie is a nice break from the chaos, a nice little interlude sounding track that I like a lot. Purity Weeps. It's really good. And now, number 6. This is another band that I only know about because of the Garza podcast. Am I sounding like a broken record yet? I'm telling you, like, if you're a fan of metal and you want to know what's going on in the current state of metal, please subscribe to that podcast. Like, even if you're not that big of a fan of Suicide Silence, like, I'm not the biggest fan of Suicide Silence. I love The Cleansing, but he is such a good podcast host. He's such a likable guy, and all the discussions with all the bands, like, I am so glad that I found out about this podcast. And there's a lot of statistics that say that you stop checking out new music once you turn 33. And I'm almost going to be 39, and I'm always trying to see where the wind's blowing. I'm not saying I'm always going to like everything new that comes out. Like, I'm really not liking how a lot of the bands are going towards the octane side of things. It used to be metalcore. Like, the Garza podcast has helped me keep caught up, you know? Because I'm a busy guy, and I don't really have the time to, like, crawl in the rabbit hole for new music like I used to be in my 20s, you know? But 1056 is a band he had on, and just the way they were talking, the bands they were being compared to on like other music review sites, something told me I gotta check this band out. And I'm so glad I did. Like, this band is savage. They are heavy. I don't think they really play too many actual riffs at all. Like, it's all just sludgy rhythms. Super detuned, sludgy rhythms that are kind of making up for where some of these bands like Darko and Amur are kind of like falling off with their songwriting. 1056 gave me that fix, and I love this record right away. I already have songs that I remember, and I'm practicing to this vocalist all the time too. His mid-range, like low, guttural, brutal, tough guy shit. Like, let's see, the opener. I can't remember the name of it right now. I want to say it's Exit Bag. Exit Bag. There's one called, not Shit Talker. What the fuck is it called? Shit Spitter. Shit Spitter. This is a full-length album that was comprised in 2 parts. Part 1 is definitely better than part 2. I will say that. There's a song called Boy that I listened to a ton of times. Very good song. And one of the things that I really liked about this album when I was listening to it for the first time is if there was a part that was starting to bore me a little bit, it ended and it just changed into something else that was just interesting or brutal as fuck. And there are parts in this album where the electronic side of things kind of bog things down, but they never really last too long. Like, if you don't like a part of a song where it's going, it's going to change. Like, and that's one thing I really liked about this album. It didn't overstay its welcome. Some songs are better than others, and right now I'm definitely vibing more with part 1 than part 2. But I like the whole thing. And I definitely want to do a vocal cover of something on this record. Number 5. This is a band I found out about because a lot of people that are close to me that listen to the kind of music I listen to told me that I would like this band a lot. And they did not disappoint when I checked out this album. Number 5 is Hail the Sun with their new album Divine Intertension. This band reminded me of a lot of other bands and put me on a little bit of a nostalgia trip, but at the same time it felt modern and original also. The singer of this band, I don't want to say he's like Tillian, because he's not, but he has that really high-pitched kind of singing voice. Not the most masculine of singing voices. And it took me back to a little bit of Cove Reber era Seosin. It took me to Sky Eats Airplane, one of my favorite bands that should have been a lot bigger than they were. But at the same time, like, it was making me think a lot. And there's a lot of key tracks I want to highlight on this one. There's the closer of the album, Under the Floor. It's supposed to be about the perspective of the victims of John Wayne Gacy. And it has a music video to accompany that as well. And it was all just really, really well done. Maladapted is basically a song about just stop needing to feel like you can control everything every time when it comes to your own life and just kind of letting go and letting yourself just go where the wind blows. I have trouble doing that just because of the things I've been through in life. And I feel like because I can't really do that yet, the lyrics spoke to me more. But lyrics and vocals aside, the guitar work does not stop. The bass guitar work does not stop. The drumming, like, it is kind of like Dance Gavin Dance in that they do all this intricate shit, but make it into a cohesive and memorable song. This album is incredible, and I did not know anything about this band. Like, that's another big difference between the list this year and the list last year. Is the list last year I felt like I was talking a lot about bands I already knew about and have been a long time fan of, whereas this year I was kind of forced to check out new stuff because a lot of the bands that I'm a long-time fan of are either kind of in between albums or they've dropped songs but not albums yet. You know, like, I kind of had to check out some new stuff this year, and I like that. I like being challenged, and I like staying current, and I think it helps my own music too. And this band reminded me of so many things, but didn't ever feel like they were emulating those things, plagiarizing those things. I thought about Scary Kids Scaring Kids a lot too when I was listening to this. And like I said, Cove Reber era Seosin. And Cove has a new band called Dead American. If you have the chance to check that out, it's pretty good. I definitely think I like it more than anything Seosin has done since the Spider album. I was just all over the place with this one. And while I liked some songs better than others, none of them were bad. And with the length of the album, I think it was over a half hour, I was wondering if it was going to get stale or overstay its welcome. Because sometimes when things are this technical and this noodly, you can kind of get lost in all of that. This was a great album. There were 2 tracks. Let me look at my notes here that link together. Yeah, In My Dream and Saw You Hanging. They're like a 2-part thing. Incredible, man. Like everything about the 60-minute session blocks or something like that. Like, I'm kind of new to this album, so if I'm saying some of these song names wrong, I apologize, but I was very impressed by this. And for something that I don't know that much about to skyrocket to number 5 on this list, like, it's got to be good. I love this album. I'm going to listen to it many more times to come, and this is definitely a band that's on my radar. Number 4, Gideon and their brand new album, More Power, More Pain. They were put more on my radar because of the Garza podcast, but I already knew who these guys were, and I've actually seen them live. I saw them live in 2014 at the Mosh Lives tour, and they were nothing like this hillbilly hardcore thing that they are today, and I'm getting a kick out of all of it. I'm not going to lie. I think it's fucking awesome. And before we get into the nitty-gritty of the music on this thing, there's so many samples of spoken word dialogue in between the tracks that center on a guy who was conditioned at a young age to be everything like his dad. And I'm guessing his dad was a musician. Like, I hear these songs every day on my shuffle, and like one of the samples is like, you were taught to act like, sing like, be like your daddy from day one, or something like that. Like, I don't know if these samples were made specifically for this record or if they're from something else. I'd really like to know that. If anybody knows that, put it in the comments. But all those samples, they're very intriguing, and they definitely are great as in-between pieces with this album. And something I like about this album is you think in the first half, you're just getting this tough guy, the Ghost Inside style hardcore all the way through. And then once you get to like these second half of the album tracks like Carry You, If You Love Me, Let Me Go, and what's the other one? Midnight Blue, with this great outro that segs into Carry You. It just has a whole nother level of depth that you never thought you were going to get if you're new to this band. And even though I've always known about this band, I've seen them live almost 10 years ago now, I don't know a lot about them. But I do know that they used to be a religious band, a Christian band, and they've kind of stepped back from that. And I think they stepped back from that for the best reason that you could possibly do that for. They said they have met all these amazing people in their career who don't practice a religion, and they don't want to subscribe to a belief where people can be these amazing human beings but spend eternity in hell because out of all of the 400 plus religions in the world, they didn't choose to subscribe to Christianity, or maybe they didn't choose to subscribe to any religion. You know, it's like, when you really think, heaven doesn't make sense. There's no fucking way you can make one place that will make all of humanity happy, because there are so many different kinds of human beings in this world, or so many different kinds of things will make them happy. Like, if I was to die right now, today, and I would spend eternity because I believed in God with all the people I've ever met in churches, instead of all of the non-religious people that I've met in bands that I've been in, that ain't paradise for me, man. I'm not somebody that claims to know everything. When it comes to religion, none of it has ever made itself real to me. There's over 400 plus religions in the world, and all of them, in my mind, at this point in my life, at almost 39 years old, they all kind of come off to me as nonsense equally. But at the same time, I'm not somebody out there flaunting my atheism and telling everybody else what to believe. You know, like, I've had Mormons come to my doorstep, and a lot of people just dismiss them. I challenge them on their beliefs when they come to the doorstep. You know, like I'm not subscribing to their shit, but I'll ask them some questions, you know, like I'll stump them a little bit. But a lot of the times, I'm going to go off on a little bit of a tangent here. A lot of the times when they have these Mormons going door to door, there are these young 20 something beautiful women walking alone on the street. There's no cars out there. They don't have a driver like watching and making sure nothing goes wrong. They just throw these women out there because all they care about is getting their shit out there. Like, for that reason alone, I would never subscribe to this belief. Like, and I can see it in their eyes when I talk to them, that they're brainwashed. Like, I think the last time a Mormon tried to like sell me on what they were doing, it was another really, really pretty girl in her early 20s. And all I could do was just say, stay safe. Like, they put these people in harm's way for their beliefs and to get numbers and phone number. I even said to her, I'm not subscribing to this shit, but if they want you to come back with phone numbers, I'll give you one. Just to get you off the fucking street. Like, and that has nothing to do with this album. I'm kind of going off on a tangent here, but there's a song early in the album where they kind of do like a Deftonesy kind of thing. There's a song called Take Off, okay? That's kind of like the polarizing track of this record because it's really, really nu metal. And I think the nu metal main hook of the song kind of works. Where it falls flat is where they do these really try hard, turntable-y, Limp Bizkit kind of things. And it doesn't fit with the tough guy aesthetic that they're going for. Like, when I'm thinking of tough guy music, I'm not thinking of Limp Bizkit. Like, but I'm always going back to this record. I have no shame in saying this is number 4 on the list. It's such a good album. I'm so glad I bought it. I did buy it. And since I did, let me look and see if there's any tracks I'm forgetting about here. Too Much Is Never Enough. The title track. I love that slurred sample before it started where it's like, do you know what changed you? Like, oh my God. Like, this album is great. I'm so glad I got this. Number 3. Dying Wish and their new album, Symptoms of Survival. This album is incredible, man. It's incredible. I did a reaction video for Paved in Sorrow, and I really wasn't much of a fan of this band in the beginning. Like, Emma's vocals, her screamed vocals, never really did anything for me, and the way they mixed it in their earlier recordings, it just didn't mesh well. It was too loud or something. It was very shrill. And when my friend Zach, who's going to be the producer of my next album, who's a diehard fan of this band, recommended Paved in Sorrow to me, he knew that I really liked her clean vocals, which really were put on display on the single Watch My Promise Die. And Paved in Sorrow was such a good song, such an emotional song that hit me so hard. Like, when I was doing that reaction video, I almost teared up a couple times. Like, it's so good. And I was hoping that most of the album would have her clean vocals because they're so good. Most of the album does not. There are more parts with her clean vocals and they're all good, but I didn't know this was going to be so breakdown heavy. And all the breakdowns slam so fucking hard. There's a song called Starved where the ending breakdown is just so fucking good, man. And the opener is amazing. When they go melodic, it's very Killswitch Engage-esque. It's really good. Like, the opener's great. There's a song called Tongues of Lead. It's really good. The close is really good. This album is incredible, man. Like, it's really fucking good. And they deserve every ounce of hype that they're getting right now. Like, and I would definitely be comfortable saying that Emma is my favorite female vocalist in metal right now. And that's coming from someone who didn't really care for her vocals in the beginning. She has grown so much. And she's worked her way from being somebody I was kind of on, and now she's my favorite female vocalist in metal, hands down. Number 2. Perhaps I'm a bit biased towards this band because I like them so much, and I always have. But number 2 on the list, Mother from Veil of Maya. Veil of Maya, to me, is just such a perfect way to integrate really poppy singing with technical metalcore, sometimes gent, sometimes deathcore. Like those aspects of their sound are the backbone. And the poppy stuff is done extremely well, but it's never used as a crutch. And one of the reasons why this is number 2 on the list, besides the fact that I like them so much and I've seen them live many, many times, and Matriarch is one of my favorite albums of all time, is because of the way they put this album together. This album was structured to please all the fans from every era of their sound. If you're not very familiar with Veil of Maya, they used to be just straight deathcore. Straight deathcore, a little bit of mathcore, a little bit of chaotic, like techie kind of gent and stuff like that. Like if you hear their album ID's every bit as good as this record is, but for different reasons. And Matriarch, I would still say, is their crowning achievement. And I'll say that because Matriarch had tracks like 33 and Tellurette, and like they had these songs that really, and Mikasa, they all doubled down on like thrash riffage. And I was almost reminded of like Killswitch sometimes on those tracks. And like Lucy had like this like bass lead, and I love that their bassist doesn't play with a pick. Not something you see very often in metalcore. Like he's just weaving in and out, man. Like their bass is fucking rules, dude. Every single person in this band is so integral to their success and their sound. And the only thing I can really say negative about this album is like they threw away a bunch of singles because they wrote an album and scrapped it. I wish they would have put Outrun on this record, especially being that it's only 10 tracks. It's a really short album. I think Outrun would have fit pretty good on here, but I like the way they structured this album so much. The opener, Tokyo Chainsaw. Sometimes I'm not the greatest with song titles. Yeah, Tokyo Chainsaw. It slams, it goes hard. Then you got Artificial Dose with like a pretty strong hook. Of all the songs on this album that I've heard complaints about, that's the one I've heard complaints about the most because they find the chorus to be kind of like formulaic. And maybe it is, but I just love hearing it so much. Reconnect. I want to talk about that one. If I was going to complain about anything in regards to Reconnect, there's a lead guitar lick that's all through the song, and when the song is done, they do that lick over an electronic synth pad beat, and it's so short-lived, and it sounds so good. I could have listened to that on its own for like another minute, but he really does something different, the vocalist, on that chorus. There's almost like a Deftones-y feel, very atmospheric, very different. Like all the clean sung, poppier kind of songs that present themselves on this record are much more few and far between than they were on the previous 2 albums. But when they come in, they're done really well. But the backbone of this album is the heavy aspect of their sound. And I feel like they made this album to appease all of their fans from all of the different eras of their sound, and I think they did a great job with that. Like, I love the way this album is put together. I like the fact that you got Mother Part 4. This is almost like a prog song. It has no chorus. It's definitely something I have not heard them do since Lucas joined. There's tons of clean vocals on that, but once that one's done, it's just brutality for the next 3 tracks to the end of the album. Synthwave, Vegan, Lost Creator, and Death Runner. You know, like, I really, really like the way this album was structured. I do. And everybody in this band did such a great job with this record, and they are one of my favorite bands, and for good reason. Like, I like Born of Osiris. Like, I've been a fan of Born of Osiris since the very beginning. When they were in their early days, an old band that I was in almost opened for them, but their tour bus broke down. Like, I'm very familiar with Born of Osiris, but I think I like these guys better. And Lucas is a phenomenal vocalist, man. He's a phenomenal vocalist that knows that he can sing like any fucking pop singer out there, but he doesn't rely on it. Like, the main focus on this record is tech heaviness, being interesting, and like synth pad shit, and like Mark, the guitarist, there's no other guitarist out there like him. I love this band. And all right, now that we're getting to number one, number one is an album that's gotten a lot of love and a lot of hate. And I know what some people might be thinking as I lead up to this. Am I really going to be the millionth YouTuber that says that this is the best album of the year? It it kind of is, man. Even if you don't like Vessel's vocals, he is such an underrated pianist. And just on the strength of Aqua Regia and Euclid alone, this is one of the best albums I've ever heard. I think a lot of the hate comes from two things. Number one, people constantly lumping these guys in as a metal band. How do you think this is a metal band? And number two, not being able to wrap your head around what they're doing. I've listened to this album so many times, and I still can't wrap my head around what they're doing as a whole. I don't need to. I just keep coming back. I think these guys just have many, many different kinds of music that they like, much like I do, and they want to do all of it. And there's a story here, and I didn't know who these guys were until Chokehold. Like, I followed along with a lot of the other YouTubers in finding out about this band for the first time through Chokehold and the singles leading up to this album. And every time I was just like, I don't know what they're going for, but I love this. And some songs took longer than others. Like Chokehold and Vor didn't really super grab me at first, but Granite, Aqua Regia, especially Aqua Regia, man, like that really shows, like, even if you don't like Vessel's vocals, his piano playing is so incredible. And when I finally got this album, because they put all the singles leading up to this in the beginning, not only in the beginning, but kind of in the order that they were released, I went right to number 6, Ascensionism. And there are a lot of parts of that song that kind of remind me of the moodier passages that Bastille does. I'm a fan of Bastille. I'm not a big fan of indie pop as a whole, but I do really like Bastille. And maybe I would dislike this more if I wasn't such a fan of them, but I hear Bastille in bits and pieces of many of these tracks. And Ascensionism, the rock part really surprised me. Okay. And then the track Are You Really Okay? Like, I don't watch too many big name YouTubers, but one of the ones I do like a lot is Tank the Tech. And I watched him dissect this record song by song. And when he got to Are You Really Okay? He said, this song doesn't really fit in with the album. Maybe it doesn't, but it's still just so moving. And trying to direct somebody that's in pain against self-harm, and where the rock sections come in are so poignant and they hit so hard. The Apparition, incredible track. Like Rain, like this is one of those bands I kind of want to cover them, but it's like, can I do it justice? Because I know all the words to Rain, and I practice vocally to Rain all the time. I kind of want to do my own thing to Rain, but I'm not ready yet. But Rain is like so good, and the Closer is my favorite track of this record, man. Euclid is incredible. Like, let me just say, like, Dying Wish being number 3, Veil of Maya being number 2, and Sleep Token being number 1. These were all very close. Like, this doesn't blow those albums away. It was all very, very close. But I can't deny how good this is, man. Just the piano playing alone. I mean, I'm trying to get better and better at keyboard all the time. So maybe I have more of an admiration for his craft than like some kind of expert keyboard player would have, but I love his style. And there's a reactor. He goes by the Music Shed. And I've watched all his reactions, and he's such a good piano player that when he stops the song and just kind of like goes on like a tangent along with it, I almost wish he would keep them paused and keep it going. Like, there's just something about this style when somebody's just letting loose on a keyboard that just gets me, man. If you don't take anything away from this album, Sleep Token's album, Take Me Back to Eden, it's the piano playing, man. It's so good. They do not give a shit about genres. They're going to do what they want to do, and they do so much here that it could sound mishmashed and disproportionate here, like it doesn't work there, like there's just too much here. Like, everything works. Everything works. It's almost fucking baffling how well this works. And I'm the kind of person, if you followed my content, where I'm a bigger fan of shorter songs, bands that make their point and dip. My next album, if it even ends up being 42 minutes at best, I'll be surprised, because like I said, I'm trim and fat. I'm not really like a long song kind of guy. This thing's over an hour long. And it never lost me for a single fucking minute, man. And I think a lot of the hate surrounding this band is because people just can't wrap their heads around it. And I can't wrap my head around this shit either, man. This is something else. It's something else, but at the same time, it's really accessible too. You know, it's a fucking brain breaker. I'm not a big fan of like the whole mask shtick either. And I've seen live clips of this band, and I think that whole shtick kind of hurts their performance. I'd rather just see them do what they do as they are. I'm not really that huge on the whole anonymous thing with these guys. You know, I mean, I get it, but I'd rather just see these fucking guys as they are, doing what they do. Like, anytime I've watched a live clip of them, that was my thought, is like, the getup is kind of taking away from the quality of the music, you know? Like, these guys are blowing up, and this is one of the few bands I can say they're blowing up because they deserve it. This is really good, man. I want to close out this year by giving a huge shout out to all the new subscribers that I've gotten this year. I had a goal at the beginning of this year to hopefully get to 200 subscribers by the end of this year. And at the beginning of this year, I only had like 50 something. I didn't have very many. And only 10, maybe 12 tops of the subscribers that I have on this channel are people that I know already, friends or family. Everything else has been the algorithm putting something out and somebody out there liking what I do enough to subscribe. And I probably am not going to actually make that goal, but I came damn close, and I'm so grateful to everybody that checks out my stuff, subscribes to my stuff. I'm really grateful to anybody that's going to check out my album when it gets here. And just know that the means I have to make my videos are very bare bones, but the effort's always there. You may not think I'm the best commentator in the world or anything close to it. Sometimes I don't even like hearing the sound of my own voice, but just know you're always getting honest commentary. I'm not going to pretend to like everything for clicks, but I'm not going to gatekeep and nitpick every little thing either. You know, like, it's all about honesty here, and just enjoying music and enjoying and appreciating whoever is so kind to watch my content. And as this year is going to be even busier than the last, because I'm juggling being a dad, maintaining this house, working a full-time job, and trying to get this album done and do this channel. There's going to be probably periods of time where there aren't going to be that many uploads on this channel. I'm going to do something on this channel every chance I get. And don't think ever because I haven't uploaded anything in a week or two that I'm giving up on it, and that I don't want to give the people that have been so kind to subscribe any content. I'm not quitting. I'm not going anywhere. I promise you that. And I'm really hoping, as far as my own music, this is going to be my year. And I hope that you guys all have a great holiday, and I hope this is your year too, That's all I got to say about this one. Until next time, thanks for watching.